Despite a promising future, Brazil's food industry is far from flourishing. Although it has potential to be an agricultural superpower due to its abundant and fertile soil, the country as a whole struggles to provide consistently affordable food for its population. For example, take the tomato.
Tomatoes sparked national outrage due to its 122% price increase from the previous year. This issue has made the cover of 2 national magazines and become the subject of Brazilian mockery. There have been cartoons depicting lottery winners bathing in puree and bank robbers making off with crates of tomatoes. The sad thing is, this isn't far from the truth. There have been sparkling reports stating that tomatoes are becoming a part of organized crime. The custom officers claim that Argentine tomatoes are being added to smugglers' products alongside their usual goods of drugs, electronics, and cigarettes. Brazilians are doing anything to get a lower price on this red fruit.
Despite the Brazilian bank's best efforts to keep food inflation below 4.5%, prices rose to be 6.6% during the last year. The price of more than 2/3 of the items used to calculate food inflation rose in the past month, causing the 2% difference in the target number and reality. The mockery of the people spurred the bank to try and improve these statistics by raising the base interest rate, but it really didn't help. Historically, the prices have been steadily rising over the past years, but now they've been fluctuating wildly from month to month. In October of 2013, the food inflation rate in Brazil was almost 9%, but by the middle of March in 2014, it had dropped to 6.3%. But by the end of September, the number had gone back up to 8.2%. Why so much inconsistency?
For one thing, the attention has turned to the crops that will make the country the most money, such as soybeans, corn, coffee, and sugar. This leaves the idea of affordable food for the Brazilians in the dust. The need of space for the exported crops is taking away land from the small farm owners.
So now the industrialization of commodity crops has overtaken the Brazilian economy, leaving small family-owned farms to fend for themselves and be expected to provide the nation with homegrown foods. Socially speaking, this situation seems a bit unjust. As money flows into the country, food is hardly to be found.
It's safe to say that at this point, the wealth of the country is being put before the needs of the people. Although poverty and starvation rates are fairly low for such a populous country, Weber Amaral and Alessandro Peduto claim in their essay, Food Security, the Brazilian Case, that 1/3 of Brazilians are considered food insecure.
Brazil's government, hardly helping matters, claims that the rise in foods like tomatoes, onions, and carrots is due to the weather. As quoted on Reuters.com, the Brazil Secretary of Agriculture, Nery Geller, said that there have been some climate problems in some regions where the crops were being grown, somehow suggesting that prices would soon fall.
But hoping prices will fall again after a rainstorm passes won't get the job done. And although weather has played a part in bad crop seasons, people aren't convinced that the rain or shine is what's ruining business. Farmers and economists believe that there are deeper structural issues in the economy than the authorities would care to admit.
According to the Observatory of Economic Complexity, 30.9% of all Brazilian exports are commodity crops like coffee, soybeans, and raw sugar. Food doesn't even make the list of most imported items. Petroleum, cars, and vehicle parts are of the utmost importance to import into the country.
Furthermore, due to the fact that food for the people is almost forgotten because of the concentration on cash crops, the farms that are supposed to be supplying the food for the people are struggling. Reuters.com says that 60% of Brazil's vegetable farms are still family-run and rely on manual labor, making it completely impossible for them to supply all of Brazil with food.
Another component of Brazil's economy that makes the food business stagnant is the lack of labor available for unskilled jobs like farming. Brazil enjoys an extremely low unemployment rate of 4 to 5% according to tradingeconomics.com, which is extremely impressive, except that good opportunity for the people means that people looking for work are less likely to work in the fields versus an air-conditioned office.
Also, it's the inflation of the food that's been hurting business. Historically, Brazil has always had horrific inflation problems. 2002, inflation was at 12.5%. 1995 was 22.4%. And 1994 was a big year at 916.5%. Due to the World Cup that year and a hyperinflation crisis the government was scrambling to solve. The cane fields, grain fields, and soy fields dominate the agricultural lands, causing formations of groups like MST, or Brazil's Landless Peasants Movement. The leader of this movement, João Pedro Stadil, says that there are 6 million farm workers and family farms that only have 15% of the land, and they're supposed to be providing for 80% of what's consumed domestically.
So Brazil's long struggle with inflation, along with other factors like too many commodity crops, too small farms, not enough imports, and a labor shortage, have all led to inflation of food prices. So how can we get tomatoes to be worth less than drugs again? Well, there are two main causes to this problem, and two possible fixes to get the food industry in Brazil back on track. The lack of labor on Brazil's farms has a lot to do with the lack of transportation in the country, which has always been an issue. Not only does this mean that workers can't make the trips out to the farm to work, but grocery stores are hurt as well from a lack of business. A change in the transportation system would be a good fix.
For the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, according to UKVooters.com, $11.3 billion went to infrastructure improvements for the tournament. But a lobby group for engineering firms called Cineco says at least 1/5 of the projects were dropped. If Brazil could follow up on improving public transportation like it said it would, the food industry could improve dramatically.
Another fix to this problem could be to allot more land to small farmers for domestic crops. In 2012, the Brazilian Congress adopted a new land law allowing more hectares of land to be deforested and used for commodity crops to further the agricultural industry. But if this extra land space was used as land to feed the country, Brazil's food inflation would decline significantly.
So despite Brazil's history of inflation, lack of labor, superfluous exports, lack of transport, and relaxed legislation, there are ways to improve food inflation situation in the country. Improvements can be made in transportation, and laws can be created to tighten controls on land. With these fixes, maybe people won't have to stealthily smuggle tomatoes into Brazil anymore.
What information did you have a hard time finding as you were doing your research, and how did you work around that?
Well, one of our hiccups was that we were trying to find a couple of good pictures to put on the slideshow, but we couldn't locate them because most of the sources we had learned that they came from were in Portuguese. So that was difficult. But in regards to the information, it was difficult to find good graphs that weren't too complicated to put on the slideshow. So we had an issue with the complication, like how we watched earlier on what not to do.
Okay, your two solutions, Jalen, about changing transportation and allotting more land to farmers, I'm sure as you were doing research, you found some people who are critical of deforestation and taking the land from forests and turning it into farmland. Why did you end up choosing that solution, or supporting that solution?
Well, like I said earlier, 15% of the land is given to family farms, and they're still manually run, and they are supposed to be providing for a main portion of the country. And so I think that if they were to get that land, just a little more, even if it was not like that much, that it would help and benefit the ability to get more food for the country.